The scent of stale beer and desperation clung to Matteo like a second skin, a familiar comfort in the dim, smoke-hazed corners of the siren's call. He nursed a glass of amber liquid, the ice long melted, watching the woman behind the bar. Her black skin, a rich, dark umber, shimmered under the low lights, a stark contrast to the pale faces he usually encountered in his world. She moved with a fluid grace, wiping down the counter, her laughter a bright, unexpected chime cutting through the low murmur of conversations. "Another one, eh, signore?" she asked, her voice a loper, a hint of a playful challenge in her eyes as she reached for his glass. "You'll drown yourself before the night's out." Matteo offered a faint smile, a rare sight that usually signaled trouble, just savoring the moment. "Cara, this is the only place in Palermo where the whiskey tastes like freedom." She chuckled, a deep, resonant sound that vibrated through the worn wood of the bar. "Freedom? For a man like you? I doubt it. More like an escape, perhaps." She refilled his glass, the ice clinking softly. "What's escaping you tonight, signore?" "My own shadow, perhaps," he replied, swirling the liquid. "And the endless chatter of men who think they know everything." He raised his glass to her. "To quiet, then. And to the woman who provides it." She leaned closer, her eyes, dark and intelligent, crinkling at the corners. "Tina. My name is Tina." She extended a hand, her grip firm, surprisingly strong. "And you, signore?" "Matteo," he rumbled, his thumb tracing the back of her hand for a fleeting moment. "Just Matteo." A flicker of surprise crossed her face, a recognition of the unusual informality from a man like him. "Just Matteo, then," she repeated, a right twist to her lips. "Well, just Matteo, you look like you carry the weight of Sicily on your shoulders." "Only half of it," he countered, a glint in his eye. "The other half is usually trying to put me 6 feet under." He took a long swallow of his drink. "You're not from here, are you, Tina? Your accent, it sings." "No," she confirmed, pulling back to serve another customer, her movement economical. "I came here for a new beginning. A place where the sun always shines, even when the hearts are cold." She returned, leaning against the bar. "And you, Matteo? What keeps you rooted in this land of ancient grudges?" "Tradition," he answered, his gaze distant. "Family. And a certain obligation." He looked at her, a strange curiosity in his eyes. "You seem to understand the weight of things unseen." "Everyone carries something," Tina said, a softness entering her voice. "Some just hide it better than others." She picked up a damp cloth, wiping down a spot meticulously. "But tonight, it seems you're not hiding it at all." "Spill it, Matteo." "What's bothering the big, silent man?" He hesitated, then let out a short, humorless laugh. "Women. Always women. Or rather, the lack of them. The right ones, anyway." He emptied his glass. "And the constant expectation that I should produce an heir, a son, to carry on the name, the legacy." He scoffed. "As if it's that simple." Tina raised an eyebrow. "Is it not? For a man of your standing? I imagine women fall at your feet." "They do," he admitted, a bitterness in his tone. "But not for the right reasons." And even then, he trailed off, a shadow crossing his face. "I've been told it's a lost cause. A barren tree in a fertile orchard." Tina's expression softened further. "Oh, Matteo, is that what truly troubles you? That you can't have children?" She reached across the bar, briefly touching his arm. "Sometimes the doctors get it wrong. And sometimes fate has a funny way of surprising us." "Fate?" he scoffed, shaking his head. "Fate usually delivers me another problem, not a miracle." He looked at her, a sudden, bold glint in his eyes. "Tell me, Tina, do you believe in miracles?" She met his gaze, unflinching. I believe in possibilities, Mateo. And in seizing the moment. A slow, knowing smile spread across her lips. Perhaps tonight, you should let fate surprise you. The air between them thickened, charged with an unspoken invitation. Mateo's usual guardedness slipped, replaced by a raw, almost desperate vulnerability. He found himself drawn to her warmth, her quiet strength, a stark contrast to the brutal ambition that surrounded him daily. He finished his drink, the ice clinking against the glass. Perhaps I should, he murmured, his voice rough. Perhaps I will. He spent the rest of the night talking to Tina, not about his world, but about hers, about her journey to Sicily, her dreams, her wry observations of human nature. Her laughter was a balm, her eyes, deep pools of understanding. When the bar finally emptied, and the last drunk stumbled out, leaving them alone in the quiet, she looked at him, a question in her gaze. So, Mateo, she said, her voice soft in the sudden silence. Did you find your quiet tonight? He rose, walking round the bar to stand before her. His hand reached out, cupping her cheek, his thumb gently stroking her skin. I found something far more interesting, Tina. His gaze dropped to her lips. Something unexpected. She leaned into his touch, her eyes fluttering closed for a moment. Unexpected can be exhilarating. His lips found hers. Her hands rose, gripping his shoulders, her fingers digging into the thick fabric of his jacket. He broke the kiss, breathless, his eyes dark with desire. My place, he whispered, his voice hoarse. Now. She nodded, her eyes shining in the dim light. Lead the way, Mateo. Months later, the memory of that night, a blur of intoxicating passion and raw connection, had faded into the background of Mateo's demanding life. He hadn't returned to the siren's call, hadn't seen Tina since. His world, a labyrinth of shadows and whispered threats, had reclaimed him entirely. One sweltering afternoon, a phone call shattered the fragile peace of his office. His capo, a man whose voice usually held the weight of granite, sounded uncharacteristically agitated. Mateo, you need to get to the hospital. Pronto. The Palermo General. Mateo's jaw tightened. What's happened? Who's hurt? His mind immediately raced through his associates, his family, the endless list of potential targets. Not hurt, exactly, the capo replied, a strange mix of confusion and urgency in his tone. More like an emergency. For a child, a baby. They're asking for you. Specifically, for blood. Mateo frowned, a cold knot forming in his stomach. Blood? For a baby? What in God's name are you talking about? He had no children, no family members with newborns in distress. They say it's yours, Mateo, the capo said, his voice dropping to a low, incredulous whisper. A woman named Tina. She just had a baby, a girl. And she's in trouble. Needs a transfusion. And they say you're the father. The words hit Mateo like a physical blow. Tina. A baby. His? Impossible. The doctors, the specialists, they had all confirmed it. He was infertile. A dead end. He felt a surge of anger, then a wave of disbelief so strong it almost buckled his knees. This is some kind of trick, he growled, his voice tight with suppressed fury, a setup. I don't have a child, I can't. Mateo, listen to me, the capo insisted, his voice firm now. They have records. Your name. From a previous visit. And this woman, Tina, she's insisting. And the baby. She's in critical condition. They need the blood match now. They say you're a perfect match. A perfect match. The phrase echoed in his mind, cutting through the layers of his denial. The possibility, however remote, gnawed at him. What if? What if, against all odds, that one night, that unexpected connection, had defied all medical pronouncements? Send a car, he commanded, his voice devoid of emotion, a cold resolve settling over him. Now, the hospital corridor hummed with the sterile scent of antiseptic and hushed anxieties. Matteo moved through it like a predator, his presence causing nurses to shrink back, doctors to avert their gaze. He found Tina in a small waiting room, her face pale and drawn, her eyes red-rimmed but blazing with a fierce protectiveness. She sat hunched, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She looked up as he approached, her eyes widening in surprise, then hardening with a mixture of fear and defiance. "You came," she stated, her voice raspy. "They said you needed blood," Matteo replied, his tone flat, betraying none of the turmoil raging inside him. "For a child," they said. "It's mine." Tina let out a shaky breath, a single tear tracing a path down her cheek. "She's so tiny, Matteo. So fragile. She needs you." He felt a strange tremor deep within him. "Is it true, Tina? After all this time, after everything I was told. Is she mine?" "Yes," Tina whispered, her voice cracking. "She is. Our daughter, our little miracle." She looked at him, her gaze pleading. "Please, Matteo, she's fighting. She just needs a chance." A doctor, a harried man with kind eyes, approached them. "Signore Matteo? We need you in the blood donation center, immediately. Every second counts." Matteo looked at Tina, at the raw anguish etched on her face, at the desperate hope in her eyes. The anger, the disbelief, the years of resigned acceptance, all faded, replaced by a primal instinct he hadn't known he possessed. He was a father, and his child needed him. "Lead the way, Dottori," he said, his voice firm, resolute. "I'm ready." Hours later, after the transfusion, after the agonizing wait, the doctor returned, a weary but hopeful smile on his face. "The blood worked, Signore. She's stable. Still critical, but stable. Your blood saved her life." He looked at Matteo with a newfound respect. "A strong little fighter, she is." Matteo walked into the neonatal intensive care unit, a world of hush beeps and blinking lights. He saw her then, through the glass, a tiny, fragile bundle nestled in an incubator, tubes and wires a cruel extension of her struggle. Her skin was a delicate blend of his olive tone and Tina's rich darkness. Her tiny fists clenched, a miniature warrior battling for life. A profound, overwhelming wave of emotion washed over him, a feeling he had never experienced. It was love, fierce and possessive, a protective rage he hadn't known he could feel. He turned to Tina, who stood beside him, her face streaked with tears of relief. "She's beautiful, Tina." His voice was thick with emotion. "Our daughter." Tina nodded, a soft, joyful sob escaping her. "She is. Our Sophia." Matteo reached out, taking her hand, his grip firm. "This changes everything, Tina. Everything." He looked into her eyes, a fierce determination in his gaze. "We're getting married. Immediately. She needs a family. She needs a name. My name." Tina pulled her hand away, her initial relief giving way to a familiar stubbornness. "Married. Matteo, wait. This is too much. Too fast. We had one night. One incredible, impossible night. But marriage? You're a mafia boss. I'm a bartender. We live in different worlds. Those worlds just collided, Tina," he countered, his voice unyielding. "And now they're bound together by that little girl in there. She is my blood. My legacy. And you are her mother. That makes you my family. And my family is protected. Always." "Protected?" She scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping her. "By marrying into your world. That's not protection, Matteo. That's becoming a target. You think I don't know what you are? What your family does?" Her eyes flashed with defiance. "I won't trade one kind of danger for another. Not for her. Not for me." "This is not a request, Tina," Matteo stated, his voice low, a hint of steel beneath the surface. This is how it will be. For Sophia. For us. No, she insisted, her chin jutting out. You don't get to decide my life, Matteo. You don't get to just walk back in and demand things. I carried her. I almost lost her. I will decide what's best for my daughter. He stared at her, a mixture of frustration and grudging admiration in his eyes. She was indeed stubborn, fiercely independent. Not like the other women who would jump at the chance to marry into his power. This made her even more compelling, more infuriating. You think I don't know what's best? He challenged, his voice rising slightly. My world can be dangerous, yes. But it also offers safety. Security. A name. A future for Sophia that you, alone, cannot provide. And what about love, Matteo? She asked, her voice quiet but piercing. What about a real family? Not just an arrangement? He was silent for a moment, the question hanging heavy in the sterile air. Love will come, Tina. It has to. For Sophia's sake. He reached for her hand again. This time she didn't pull away. Just give us a chance. Give Sophia a chance. She looked from him to the incubator, her gaze lingering on their daughter. The fierce maternal instinct warring with her deep-seated independence. I need time, Matteo. To think. To understand what this means. For all of us. Time is a luxury we don't always have, Tina, he murmured, his thumb stroking her knuckles, but I will give you what I can. Just know this, she is ours, and nothing will ever change that. Weeks turn into months. Sophia, strong and resilient, thrived. Tina, still living in her small apartment, allowed Matteo into their lives, cautiously, tentatively. He was there for every doctor's appointment, every milestone. He learned to change diapers, to soothe her cries, to marvel at her tiny fingers grasping his. The sight of him, a feared mafia boss, cooing at a baby, was a source of endless amusement to his men, though none dared to laugh openly. He continued to press for marriage, his arguments revolving around Sophia's future, her protection. Tina, however, remained steadfast in her refusal, her stubbornness a constant, infuriating barrier. I won't be forced, Matteo, she declared one afternoon, her voice firm as she bounced Sophia on her hip. I want to choose. To love. Not to be an obligation. And I want you safe, Tina, he retorted, his frustration evident. Both of you. Don't you understand the risks? The enemies I have. They see weakness. They see opportunity. Then live that life. She shot back, her eyes blazing. If you truly want us safe, then get out. Walk away from the family that brings only danger. He stared at her, the suggestion, unthinkable until now, hanging in the air. Leave the only world he had ever known? The power, the protection, the loyalty? It was an impossible demand. That's not an option, Tina, he said, his voice flat. You don't just leave my world. Then you don't get me, Matteo, she stated, her voice quiet but resolute. Or Sophia. Not truly. Not in the way a real family should be. The stalemate continued, a tense dance between two unyielding wills, always with Sophia as the silent, precious center. Matteo, however, was about to discover the brutal truth of his own words. One rainy evening, the call came, shattering the fragile peace he had built around his new family. It was his capo, his voice strained, laced with barely concealed panic. Matteo, it's bad. Very bad. Tina. And Sophia. They're gone. Matteo's blood ran cold. Gone? What do you mean, gone? His voice, usually a low rumble, was a dangerous growl. Her apartment. It's been ransacked. Neighbors heard a struggle. They took them, Matteo. They took your family. A primal roar tore from Matteo's throat, a sound of pure, unadulterated fury. His greatest fear, the one he had tried to protect them from, had materialized. His enemies. They had found his weakness. They had taken his daughter. And Tina, who? He demanded, his voice dangerously quiet now, a prelude to a storm. Who dared? The Morettas, the capo replied, his voice barely a whisper. They want to send a message, Matteo. To hit you where it hurts the most. Matteo slammed his fist against the wall, the plaster cracking under the force. They will regret this day, he vowed, his eyes blazing with a terrifying intensity. Every single one of them. He moved with a ruthless efficiency, his mind a whirlwind of rage and cold calculation. His network, usually used for illicit dealings, now focused solely on one objective, finding Tina and Sofia. He interrogated, he threatened, he broke bones, his usual restraint gone, replaced by a desperate, animalistic drive. The trail led him to a dilapidated warehouse on the outskirts of Palermo, a forgotten place where shadows clung to every corner. He moved in, a silent, deadly force, his men fanning out behind him. The air was thick with the scent of dust, damp concrete, and a metallic tang that made his stomach clench. He found them in a back room, tied to chairs, gagged. Tina, her face bruised but defiant, her eyes wide with terror, but also a fierce protectiveness as she strained against her bonds, trying to shield Sofia, who was whimpering softly in her arms. A crude, handwritten note was pinned to Tina's chest, a father's pain, a boss's weakness. Matteo saw red. The Moretti thugs, 3 of them, stood guard, their faces sneering. The sight of his family, vulnerable, terrified, ignited a firestorm within him. You made a grave mistake, Matteo snarled, his voice low, guttural, a sound that promised unimaginable pain. You touched what is mine. The first thug, a burly man with a scar running down his cheek, lunged, a knife glinting in his hand. Matteo moved with the speed of a viper, disarming him with a brutal twist, the knife clattering to the floor. He delivered a swift, bone-crushing blow to the man's jaw, sending him sprawling. The other two hesitated, their bravado faltering as they witnessed Matteo's terrifying transformation. He was not just a boss now, he was a father protecting his young. He moved like a whirlwind, a blur of controlled violence, each strike precise, devastating. He didn't just incapacitate, he punished. Within minutes, the room was silent save for the groans of the Moretti thugs and Sofia's soft whimpers. Matteo rushed to Tina, his hands trembling as he untied her, his gaze sweeping over her, checking for injuries. Are you hurt? He asked, his voice rough with concern. No, just scared, so scared. Matteo gently took Sofia from her, holding his daughter close, burying his face in her soft hair. Inhaling her sweet, innocent scent, he felt a profound wave of relief, so potent it almost brought him to his knees. He had almost lost them. His family. He looked at Tina, his eyes filled with an intensity she had never seen. This is why, Tina. This is why you needed my name. My protection. This is my world. And it will always come for what I love. She looked at him, her defiance finally crumbling, replaced by a raw understanding. She had seen the monster he could be, the violence he commanded, but she had also seen the desperate love in his eyes, the terror he felt at almost losing them. You were right, she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. You were right. Matteo, I was so foolish. He reached out, cupping her face, his thumb gently wiping away her tears. No, you were just trying to protect our daughter in your own way. But now you see. He looked at Sofia, then back at Tina, his gaze unwavering. I will leave this life, Tina, for you. For Sofia, for our family. Tina gasped, her eyes widening in disbelief. What? Leave the mafia? You can't. You said it was impossible. It was impossible. Matteo corrected, a grim determination setting his jaw. Until now, until they touch my family, there is nothing I won't do to keep you both safe, nothing. He looked at his men, who stood silently, watching. Their faces grim. This is my last act as capo. This is my farewell to the family that almost cost me everything. He turned back to Tina, a new light in his eyes, a flicker of hope he hadn't allowed himself before. Marry me, Tina. Not for protection, not for obligation, but because I love you. And I want to build a real life with you. Away from all of this. Tina stared at him, tears welling up again, but these were tears of hope, of profound relief. The stubbornness was gone, replaced by a deep, undeniable love. He was giving up everything for them, for her. Yes, Matteo, she whispered, her voice trembling. Yes, I'll marry you. He pulled her into a fierce embrace. Sophia nestled between them. A silent testament to their improbable love, their hard-won future. He had found his miracle, not in a barren field, but in the unexpected warmth of a bar, in the fierce spirit of a woman, and in the tiny, precious life of their daughter. The wedding was small, intimate, and held in a sun-drenched courtyard overlooking the sparkling Mediterranean Sea. No lavish displays, no ostentatious show of power. Just family. Tina, radiant in a simple white dress, her dark skin glowing, walked towards Matteo. Sophia, now toddling, clutching a tiny bouquet of wildflowers, held in her free hand. Matteo, dressed in a sharp, tailored suit, a man transformed, watched her approach, a soft smile gracing his lips. He was no longer the feared mafia boss, but a man unbound, free, and deeply, irrevocably in love. He had kept his word. The family had been informed of his departure. A dangerous, unprecedented move, but his reputation, and the sheer terror he had instilled in the Morettas, had ensured a grudging acceptance. He had sold off his illicit businesses, invested in legitimate ventures, a clean slate. A new beginning. You look beautiful, he murmured as she reached him, his eyes shining with adoration. And you, Matteo, Tina replied, her voice soft. Look, happy, truly happy. They exchanged vows, simple words, but imbued with the weight of their journey, their struggles, their triumphs. When Matteo slipped the ring onto her finger, a plain gold band, it felt like the sealing of a promise, not just between them, but to their future, to Sophia. Later, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery hues, they stood on a small balcony, Sophia asleep in her crib nearby. The gentle lapping of waves against the shore was the only sound. You really did it, Matteo, Tina said, leaning her head on his shoulder. You walked away from everything. Not everything, he corrected, his arm tightening around her. I walked towards what truly matters, you, Sophia, our life together. He kissed the top of her head. I never thought I'd have this, Tina, a family, a real one, a future. Sometimes, she whispered, her voice filled with a quiet joy. Fate has a funny way of surprising us, and sometimes, the biggest miracles come from the most unexpected places. He smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile that reached his eyes. Indeed, Caradot indeed. He looked out at the vast, peaceful sea, a symbol of their boundless new beginning. He was Matteo, a husband, a father, a man finally free, his heart full, his future bright. All thanks to the stubborn, beautiful woman who had taught him that true strength lay not in power, but in love.